Welcome to episode 1 of the Her Handmade Hustle podcast. I never thought that I'd be brave enough to start a podcast, but here we are. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Joanne Pearce. I am a female entrepreneur, wife to Dave, mother to a 4-year-old little girl called Eden, and I'm a small business owner of 14 years now, can't believe it, where I make handmade stationery for weddings and events. So I turned 40 last August and decided it was just time to mix things up a little bit. I felt like there was just something else that I wanted to do alongside running my business Vintage Twee. And basically I was constantly asked of friends and colleagues for help with their small businesses, my advice. Apparently I'm quite good at giving advice, who would know? And I've been helping them informally day to day with running their business. So I decided to set up Her Handmade Hustle, which is basically a coaching business to help other female entrepreneurs who are on their own creative mission and creative journey and setting up a business of their own. So I thought I would use my experience, I would use the things that I know to help them get from where they are now to where they want to be, similar to like I did. Now, I wasn't going to do this podcast today because last night, for those of you who know me, you know that I have this feisty 4-year-old girl who, let's just say, she's challenged in the sleep department, to say the very least. So me and my husband are always long-term sufferers of sleep deprivation. So I wasn't going to record it today because I had the worst night's sleep ever last night. However, I thought actually that's the perfect opportunity to start this podcast because that's what this is about. It's real life. It's trying to run a business, or two in my case, when life is happening around you, whether you've got kids, whether you've got another job, really busy schedules and stuff, it's hard. So part of this podcast is going to focus on the challenges that we face as women in particular, and everything that we have to juggle in order to grow a successful business and just survive. So I thought, what better day actually than to start it today. So I've got a mug of coffee, I'm good to go, and we're going to dive straight in. So no matter what it is that you want to start, whether you're a baker, whether you make candles, whether you're an artist, you want to sell your work, I want to help you as much as I can achieve your dream of making money from doing something that you love. Now, it's quite cliche, you hear that a lot, but it's true that why shouldn't you be making money and having a job doing something that you love that gives you that flexibility that only self-employment can give you? For me, it's been a game changer. I wanted to do it with a view to having a family so that I had that flexibility. I could go and pick my kid up from school when I wanted to. I could go and see school plays. I'm there if she's poorly. And that is my driving force and why I do it. It wasn't in the beginning. Obviously I didn't have children then. It was a long time ago. However, now that is the reason why I keep doing what I'm doing. I love it. And I want that freedom and that flexibility of running a life that I enjoy. And that's what I want for you too. So I'm going to basically, go through a few things today to let you know how it happened for me. I'll give you a little bit of background about myself so you know where I'm coming from. You may resonate with some of it, you may not. But hopefully you'll find this podcast, entertaining. It's, I'm a very honest person. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I don't really hide things. Some people might call me an oversharer, but I like to let people know about my situation so that that it's not always been easy. And that is what life is about. So let's get stuck in. I'll tell you again, how I started and how I've got to where I am now. So hopefully you can use some of this to give you a bit of a boost if you are thinking of starting your own business, or if you already have one and you're looking to grow it. I've always been creative from an early age. You don't have to have qualifications nowadays at all to be successful. It's one of these, it's hard work, it's determination, and that's something that I am not sure of. And a lot of the women in our family are not sure of it either. Both my grandmas were hard workers. My mum worked her socks off in the house. She brought up 2 children pretty much, on her own, while my dad worked long, long hours. So we've got this real strong sort of resilience in our family, which my sister also has as well. She's got her own business. But I've always been creative. I was always making my mum a million things when I was little. Got out the making box, we used to make cards together, all kinds of stuff. But I didn't get any qualifications in art. And sometimes people say to me when, they look at me in my business and say, oh, God, did you get a degree in art? And I say, no, I didn't. I had a degree in psychology, but not art. And in fact, I had a pretty shitty time at school, if I'm honest. I got bullied really badly, as a lot of kids do. But I ended up coming out of mainstream high school, and I got my GCSEs in a specialist unit for kids with emotional and behavioural difficulties. Now, I didn't have the behavioural difficulties, but I definitely had the emotional struggles as a result of being bullied. So I was in this very small setting where I got a chance to get my GCSEs, which I did. I got 7 in the end. I got good grades. But I went there alongside seeing a psychologist to try and combat some of the fears that I had. I had no confidence. I was scared of everything. I remember one day I woke up and I was scared of the weather. Like, I was scared because it was windy outside. It was just, I was in a really sort of bad place around the age of about 10 or 11 years old. But I was always clever. I always wanted to learn. But art wasn't a subject that was offered to me at school. So I always thought that it wasn't an option for me, especially, as a career. My A-levels were in English, psychology, communication studies. And then I went on to study psychology at university in Manchester, and I graduated, made my mum and dad proud, which, even though I feel like I've not used that degree much now, I'm glad that I did it. And then at that point, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. So I got a job as a psychology assistant, and I lasted 6 weeks before I decided that I absolutely hated it. It was a long commute. I didn't agree with the way that the lady that I was working under operated. It was just, I absolutely hated it. And I remember thinking, I've wasted 3 years studying this subject for what? So I walked out. And I did try a few jobs. I tried one in advertising, a couple of other things, but none of them felt right. And none of them were that particularly creative either. So then I actually got a job as a youth worker after that. And I don't know how I got the job, because I was so deflated and confused about what I wanted to do, that I went into the interview and I was just like, right, what does this job involve? Like, I can't imagine what I must have sounded like to the lady that employed me. But I remember feeling really defensive, really upset about the whole situation, that I couldn't find something that was right for me. But maybe it was that honesty that actually got me the job, because she gave it me. And it turned out to be a really, really enjoyable job that I loved for the time that I had it. It was about 4 years. And, this job, I worked with young people, doing lots of kind of community-based activities, but it had a real creative license with it. So I could actually do whatever I wanted project-wise with the kids. So we did all kinds of things, I won't go into them now, but everything, absolutely everything. And it was very artistic. So I got a chance to kind of let out a bit of my artistic nature with this role. So I did that for 4 years, and then something happened to me that changed my life forever. At first in a good way, and then quite rapidly not in a good way. So I met a man on a plane on a return trip from San Francisco with my sister. We had a girly holiday there. And on the way back, I was sat next to this man, this American man. And we got talking. He was handsome. He was charming. Something very exotic about him. I felt like a bit like I was in a film, this man chatting me up on an aeroplane. And this is it's an experience that I've never really talked about, because it was actually a really dark time for me. But I do feel it's important to know what happened, because it's actually the reason why I started my business, Vintage Tree, in the first place. And without it, I wouldn't be where I am today, and that is the truth. So yeah, it was all wonderful at first. We got talking, we exchanged emails. We basically started dating for the first year together. We had emails back and forward. We went to see each other, visits to and from California, and all was good. And then I decided to go and live with him in the States, because we were serious about being together, and when you're serious about something, me particularly, I see it through. So I wanted to do it. And, much to obviously my family's sort of resistance, and they didn't want me to go, and I get it now. Didn't then, but I get it now why they didn't. I gave up everything and I went. And initially it was on a 3-month tourist visa because that's as long as you could stay before you had to come back. And I just went for 3 months to see how it went, basically. And at first it was like a holiday, you know, we saw places, we ate out a lot. You know, he treated me to lots of things, treated me quite well, as expected. But then after a few weeks, it just took a drastic turn. And, you know, the truth is you can't hide who you are for long periods of time, you know, and I think he'd managed to do that up until that point. But reality hit, and in real life, he couldn't hide who he was. And I just started to see a really ugly side to this person that was just jealous, he was manipulative, nasty, really controlling behaviour, and it just wore away at me day to day. You know, the longer I stayed there, the more and more sort of broken I became. And that's the best word to describe it, because, you know, by the end of my time there, I was well and truly broken. I pretended to my family that everything was okay, obviously. You know, we spoke on the phone, we had like Skype calls, and I was fine. You know, I carried on because I'd invested so much in this man and I'd given up everything just to try and live this life that he'd promised me. And I didn't want to let myself down. I kind of wanted to prove everybody wrong. So it's like the stubbornness in me, you know. But yeah, I carried on, and I shouldn't have. I should have listened to, you know, the warning signs, seen the red flags, but I didn't. Hey ho, it happens. But, you know, his behaviour just got worse and worse over time. He manipulated me more and more, and then he started to show aggressive tendencies. You know, he never touched me physically, but I just felt quite threatened when I was around him. He was just a totally different person than he was the person that I met on the aeroplane. So while all this was going on and I was dealing with all this kind of emotional abuse, because that's what it was, I had a notepad. And when he was out at work, I used to write down ideas for a business, you know, something that I could do on my own that would make me money doing what I love, and something creative, you know, something that would get me out of the situation that I was in, because I would have something for me, because he used to tell me that there was nothing for me back at home, there was no point in going back. But I thought if I could do this on my own, then I would have something and a reason to get out of there. Anyway, it helped me focus on something positive whilst just trapped in this awful dark 1-bedroom apartment that he had for 8 hours a day while I was at work. I felt like I was literally locked away. And I just wrote everything in this notepad that I could possibly do. I love vintage. I still love vintage. I loved upcycling, like using mixed medias and like all different materials to make things, like lace and pearls, old like sheet music. That was one thing that I absolutely loved. And, you know, one of the good things that I enjoyed when I was out there was that we went to a lot of like thrift stores, antique fairs, and it was probably the only bit I actually enjoyed for the whole 3 months. But it's there where I sort of got all these ideas of things that I could make and possibly sell. And I collected some materials to start making things, but I never made anything while I was there because I was just too sad. I was too sad to even try. But I collected them and I stored them in a box. I think I put them in my suitcase under the bed and I kept them there. I learned about Etsy. I'd never heard about Etsy before, the online marketplace to sell things. Obviously, it's based in America. Back then, it was, I mean, now it's big in the UK, but it was really big in Etsy. Not as big in the UK back then, 14 years ago. But it was all ideas at this point. You know, I had no energy. I had no emotional resources whatsoever in me to do anything about it. So I didn't. But it came to the point where my visa was running out. Excuse me. And at this point, I was just so deep into the control that he had over me. And he actually asked me to marry him so that I could stay in the country and live with him and make a go of it as a married couple. And I said yes. And I still surprise myself now that I ever said yes. Because I don't remember much from that time because it was so difficult. But I know why I said yes. And that was because I felt desperate. And I didn't feel I had another way out. So, yeah, I said yes. I remember going to a department store in a mall one evening on my own. I was so poorly from the stress of it all. I had a sore throat. I was like a quarter of the weight that I was when I arrived 3 months prior. You know, I was so tired and I ended up buying this awful brown satin wedding dress. It was awful. I remember trying it on and thinking that'll do. The wedding was the next day. It was just at some like a city hall place, which is like a registry office here in the UK. And we just had 2 guests. And I was that unsure that I even ran out mid-service because I didn't know if I could do it. But he came out, he reassured me it'd all be okay once this pressure of time had been taken off us. And it wasn't. In fact, 5 minutes after we got out of the place, he turned around and told me that he wished he'd never done it. So you can imagine the heartbreak and the anguish that I felt that I'd just gone through this ceremony from this man that had promised me that he would stand by my side for the rest of my life, only to be told 5 minutes later, actually, that was a mistake. So my visa was running out the very next day, so I had to leave the country, otherwise I would never be allowed back into America. So my sister, I'll always be grateful for this, she booked me an emergency flight on his credit card, obviously, got me out of there. And I came home in February 2010. And my parents picked me up from Heathrow Airport, I remember. We lived in Stockport, which is Manchester way, and I had to fly into London. And I remember them meeting me there. My mum said she didn't recognise me. She said I just looked so gaunt and poorly. And I remember getting in the car. My dad drove back from London and I fell asleep. And I woke up when we got back home to my childhood house. And there I was, back in my parents' house, back in my old bedroom. I was just a total wreck. And it was something that I've been trying to avoid, which is why I stayed there as long as I did. But I was home now and, I was safe. But it totally destroyed me. He destroyed me. And I was 27 years old at this point. So it took me a couple of months to start functioning again. My mum used to remind me that she fed me a lot of good meals, lots of vegetables. I had a lot of cuddles. And we watched a hell of a lot of Deal or No Deal. I don't know what it was about Deal or No Deal, but we watched a lot of it. And I think it was something about when it hit 4:10, which I remember was the specific time it came on. I knew that it was nearly tea time. So once Deal or No Deal came on, it was nearly the end of the day where it went dark and I could go to bed. And I could just start again the next day and hope that I was feeling better. So I did watch a lot of Deal or No Deal. And I haven't watched it since. I don't even know if it's still on. But I can't quite face it. But, during my recovery, I remember my mum having a conversation with me about it being time to get back to normal, get a job, start working again, do something for me. And she suggested that I worked back at the hospital near their house where I used to work when I was 18. I used to live at home. And that was a good job. I enjoyed it. It was good fun. But I remember feeling really sick about the thought of having to go backwards so far, back to when I was 18 years old, as a 27-year-old woman, that I had to go back and do a job like that. So I still had my notepad, my ideas from when I was there in America, so I got it out. And I looked through it, and, I looked and I'd even circled a name for my business when I was over there. I remember doing it, and I'd circled Vintage Twee out of all the ideas I'd come up with. And then that was the one that I liked. So I decided to just do it. And I set up a desk in my old bedroom where I started making things to sell. And it was anything. At first, it was I used some of the materials that I collected from when I was over there in America. I got some vintage bottles. I remember decorating jam jars. I had images of Victorian ladies that I used to decoupage onto the vases. Put pearls on them, put lace around them. And then I opened up an Etsy shop and I put them on there. My style was vintage, Victorian sort of, and I've still got pictures of what I made back then. Now when I look at it and I think, oh my God, they are horrendous. Who would have bought them? But then one of them sold. And I remember the first sale. And I sat downstairs with my mum and my BlackBerry beeped. And it came up with this message saying Etsy transaction. And I was like, oh my God, Mum, I've sold something. And she was like, what do you mean you've sold something? And I said, I sold one of my jars. And ironically enough, it was to someone in America. It wasn't him, thank God. And she was like, she couldn't believe it. I remember we jumped up and we packaged it together and we took it straight to the post office that day and we sent it out. And I remember thinking, this is it. This is the start of my business now. I can do this. So that simple sale of this random jam jar that I made with a bit of lace on it and pearls, and I think I called it tea jar or something, encouraged me to start making some more things. And at the time, Alice in Wonderland was making a bit of a comeback. So I made these little cupcake toppers, which said "Eat Me" on them, and I made some little tags that said "Drink Me," which went on like teacups and things. And I put them on Etsy, and then they sold. So I made some more, and I put different text on them, and they sold again. And these became my biggest sellers, and they still are to this day. I can't tell you how many of these cupcake toppers I must have made in 14 years. You know, hundreds of thousands we're talking. Like, honestly, the amount of cocktail sticks I've got through, it's crazy. And anyway, so somebody had told me that they'd be really good at weddings on cupcakes. So I started to do something that said "I do" on them, printed with "I do," and people love them, especially in America at the time. Again, which is really ironic, but they loved them, and they were buying them, and they were taking pictures of them, and they were putting them on my Etsy shop as reviews, and they were sharing them on Pinterest, and people were seeing them. So then I started to think of like other wedding things that I could do. What else could I make that people would be interested in? So I started to make some favour boxes. You know, again, they weren't brilliant. They were just some boxes that I got from the wholesalers at the time. In fact, I don't even think I had a wholesaler's then. I think I went to like Hobbycraft or just a craft shop. And I made these favour boxes, and I remember putting little paper roses on them. I had lace trim on them, some pearls. And I sort of marketed them at like vintage style weddings because they were just getting popular at that time. I remember it's 2010, 2011, and things were just getting popular. So I put them on Etsy again, and people bought them. So the only kind of platform I had at the beginning was Etsy. A little bit later on, maybe a couple of months later, my cousin made me a website for free for Vintage to Eat. Never did amazingly well, but it was there. I had like an online presence outside of Etsy then. But, you know, since then I've had a few different websites. I think I've had about 5, including the current one now. So there's been a lot of change with that. But Etsy has always been constant. I've always been on there. So I mean, all this is in the space of 6 months, all this has happened. So then I decided, you know, wedding stuff seemed to be a good way to go. So I reached out to a local venue that was hosting a wedding fair. And they said that I could set up a little table for free outside their gazebo. You know, just put a few of my items on, some business cards. Yeah, they weren't going to charge me. It was like, yeah, just come along, put your stuff out, see how people react to it. So obviously, so scared. I thought, oh my God, this is the first time I'm going to get my stuff out there, see what people think. So me and Mum went along to it. I remember exactly what I wore. For some reason, I was only brown again. I don't know why. I must have gone through a brown stage during that part of my life. But yeah, brown boots, brown skirt, brown dress. I just remember it all. So we went along, and, you know, at this point, all I had were I think I had 3 items. I had some confetti cones in different colours that were made out of paper. I had my cupcake sticks, and I had some of these paper teapot favour boxes that I've made, which, I'm not kidding you, took me hours to make this template for this teapot box, and it had all these different folds in it, and I had to assemble it all manually, and I think I only charged something like $1.75 per teapot box. It was ridiculous when I think about it now, but the point is, I was doing it, and I was getting my stuff out there, and I was showing people what I was capable of. And if I got an order for them, then I'd figure out how to make however many I had to make. But at the time, I just wanted to see how people reacted to my stuff. And amazingly, people stopped. You know, they came past my table and they were like, wow, these are so beautiful. How cute, how different. I've never seen anything like it. You know, and they were picking them up. They were looking at them. They were saying, oh God, these look amazing at our wedding. And people took my business cards. And, you know, sure enough, after that fair, I started getting some inquiries. I think I got a couple of emails. I got an order from it. And it was just amazing that I couldn't believe that people were looking at my stuff and seeing it as, you know, something that they'd like at their wedding. So I remember then thinking, right, how else can I get my stuff out there? Because back then social media wasn't massive. Of course it was there, but it wasn't the only way or the primary way to market your stuff. You know, it was like you had to get out there. And I still believe you have to do that now, but that's a whole different episode for this podcast. But what I did was I went and I contacted some magazines to see if they'd give me a free feature. You know, I didn't have any money to spend on advertising. I just literally begged people to look at my work, you know, look at me, look what I've got, look what I'm doing. I was really humble and I was really honest and I was friendly when I was approaching them, you know, in my emails. I was like, look, I've just started this business. and find it really hard to get my stuff out there. I'm a female entrepreneur. I'm 27 years old. I'd love it if you could feature my stuff. Would you be willing to? And, I used to go in WH Smith because I couldn't afford to buy all the magazines, but I used to open up the magazines and look in the front cover at the names of the editors. And I would write down in my pad, who the editor was, their email address. And I'd go home and I'd email them and say, I'd love it if I could be featured in this magazine. And I'm not kidding you, I must have done this for about 20 magazines or something on this particular day. Anyway, I started to get replies from people, from the editors, saying that they would love to feature it. They love my work. They love the photos, and they'd be happy to feature it. And one of them, which was one that my mum was most proud of, was for Cheshire Life magazine, which is like this really big posh magazine that she used to love reading, even though we could never afford, any of the houses in it or any of the stuff in it. We'd always buy it, and drool over a life that, we could have had or should have had. So I got in Cheshire Life magazine, and the lady that photographed me, who came along, she was actually getting married, and what she was photographing with my little teapot favour boxes, and she said to me, I love these. I want these at my wedding. And I remember thinking, oh my God, I don't know if I can make these. I said, how many do you want? And she said, about 80, maybe 100. Would that be okay? I remember thinking, I don't know if I can make 100. I'm going to say yes, because for me in business, I believe that you say yes and then you figure out how to do it afterwards. You get that sale and then you figure it out. So I said yes. And she was like, oh my gosh, she was so excited. She was like, oh my God, these are so lovely. And I remember her ordering all these different colours. I didn't even know if I could get those card colours, but I said, yes, I can do this. Anyway, I did it. I don't remember how long it took me. It was a long time. I got a lot of glue gun burns in the process. I remember that. But I did it. And the day she picked them up, I laid them all out on the table, on this tablecloth that Mum had set out in the back room. And she looked at me, she said, they're amazing. And she was so happy with it. And that was a massive thing for me. And I loved doing that order because it's like my first proper big order. And that was probably, I reckon, say about 6 months into starting Vintage Twee and putting my first thing on Etsy. So it really started to take off around, 4 to 6 months, I would say. But that was with hard graft, going out there, getting myself out there. So yeah, I attended numerous craft fairs. I made friends with a lot of the ladies who ran the stalls, some of which are still my friends now and colleagues. I contacted blogs, wedding blogs, lifestyle blogs, things that were just getting popular then. And I got myself featured for free. And I started to earn enough money where I didn't have to live at home anymore, which was amazing. And I moved to this gorgeous, cute little flat in a town called Marplebridge, near where I live. And I was so happy there. I absolutely loved it. I didn't know how the hell I was going to pay rent. I just lived on a wing and a prayer. Sometimes I still do. And I just went for it, and every month I made the rent and I made the bill money. Even if it was close, I did it. And, the business just went from strength to strength. And then in 2013, I saw that Not on the High Street, the online marketplace, came out, and they were looking for sellers with handmade, proper handmade bespoke items. They were this company that was saying that they were going to offer something different to what you can get in the shops on your high street. So I thought, that sounds good. They had a high commission, they still do. It's around 25%, a little bit more. But I had no other outlets other than Etsy, really. My website wasn't doing much. So I signed up and I got accepted. In fact, at that point, I think back then, they were actually desperate for sellers because they were brand new. So they took me on. I didn't even have to pay a sign-up fee. I was really lucky. I just got accepted. And this was probably the turning point for me. So I know that people have their, stigma about online marketplaces like Etsy and Not on the High Street, and they take a lot of money off you and a lot of commission, but they also get the sales and they get the traction and they get the customers because they've got the advertising budget and they use it. So they bring people in to your business to see you, to make you visible, which is something that, as small businesses, we can't do ourselves. We haven't got the advertising budget that these people have. So I always say, there's a lot of women that I speak to and they say, oh no, I don't want to sell on Etsy or Not on the High Street. The commission's too high. It's like, it is, but if you build it into your costs, and you see it as your marketing budget, then actually, it's more than doable. And it's the only way that I have managed to grow my business is through these marketplaces. But again, that's a whole different episode and we will definitely delve into that in the future. So yeah, Not on the High Street was my turning point. Me and Mum worked as a team from day one, but it wasn't until I joined Not on the High Street that we had to become like a well-oiled machine. You know, we were turning out about 100 orders a week, just on Not on the High Street alone without Etsy. And that was a lot for me. I had to make every single one by hand. And then Mum used to wrap them all for me as well. She'd tissue them up, put ribbon on them, you know, package them up, and then we used to take them to the post office. Everybody hated me in the local post office because I'd be that one in the queue, you know, with 60 parcels. And back then you didn't really have like the drop and go that you have now, or click and drop, all these options for making life easy. You just had to queue up with everybody else. So you can imagine all the people behind me, their faces when I was putting 60 different jiffy bags on the scales. Yeah, I wasn't the favourite person in the village. But, you know, so yeah, my mum, she was brilliant. She was my packer. She was my motivator. She was Vintage Tree's cheerleader, you know, and she was my best friend. And we were doing so well with small business. During that time, you know, I met my husband, my now husband, Dave, a year after, in 2014. And when we moved in together, and I managed to support us both for a while on my earnings because, you know, he had a retail job at the time. He wasn't earning loads. And yeah, we didn't have any children then. So I managed to support us both quite comfortably. And at one point I was turning over about 50 grand a year, you know, about 28k profit on a couple of the best years I had. So it was never fortunes, but it was a decent amount to live on, you know. It's something that I wouldn't turn my nose up at. It was more than enough at the time. So I was never a millionaire, but it was great. Things were great. And then it was all fine until one day, in 2016. Someone was packing my orders and she told me that she got like really bad backache. In fact, it was 2015, I think. Anyway, again, bit of a blur. But she was packing my orders and I was watching her. She was bending down and she said to me she had really bad backache. And she was struggling. She said that her ribs hurt. I remember saying my ribs were really hurting. And it was a few weeks later that we found out that she had breast cancer that had spread to her bones. Now, you know, she'd had a history of breast cancer. She'd had a double mastectomy years prior to this. But we always just assumed that would, you know, be her cure and she would be okay. But it had somehow come back and it was now untreatable. So this is something, again, I find it really hard to talk about. But, you know, it's part of my story, unfortunately. And it is why I've got the determination and the resilience that I've got today. Everything that I've been through with it and my family has been through. So Mum passed away on the 31st of July in 2017, which was the day before my 36th birthday. And it is a day that will haunt me forever. You know, I've never seen anyone die before. I've never seen a dead body. It was the most frightening thing I've ever experienced. You know, I remember screaming out that I love you, Mum, the minute that I saw it happen. Like, I just needed to hear it, like, one last time. And it was just so traumatic. And, you know, I say the day that I never forget, and not for the right reasons. So it took me a while to get back on my feet after this. And honestly, I didn't know if I could continue with Vintage Tree. I just didn't think I could do it. I had, you know, it was just so personal to me and to Mum. And I just thought, you know, she was the backbone of it. She helped me day to day with my orders. Because, again, this was the height of when it was busiest, with Not on the High Street being popular. And I just thought, I don't know if I could do it. But, you know, I had a house and a mortgage and I had plans for a family one day. And I didn't want to let it go because I knew that, you know, Mum would be so mad if I threw it all away. She really would. So I had to dig deep and I kept going. And it was hard, but I kept business turning over and I managed to survive. And then the following year I got pregnant and I got married in that order. Pregnant first, then married. In fact, I was 7 months pregnant when I got married. Very uncomfortable. So Vintage Tree took a bit of a hit again while I took some time off after the birth of my daughter. And I found it really hard to cope as a new mum. You know, I didn't have my own mum and it was such a shock to the system. Oh my God, the respect that I have now for mothers. You know, even my own mother, I wish I could tell her how much I respect her for bringing up 2 children. You know, my sister's got 3. It's crazy, like, what women manage to deal with. And it was so much harder than I ever anticipated. especially running a business. And I definitely, looking back now, I definitely think I had some kind of post-natal depression, definitely. I struggled on a day-to-day basis with it. And I only managed to take 8 weeks off after I had Eden because, it's my own business and people still messaging me asking, could they have this, could they have that? And we needed the money. So I ended up saying yes, and I reopened. And then, after that, COVID hit. So I just got open again after Eden had been born. I think I was open for about maybe just under 6 months. And then COVID came along, which was wonderful or not. And it basically killed off the wedding and events industry, along with many others. But it got hit hard, and all wedding and events being cancelled. That basically meant that there was no future or foreseeable future for Vintage Twee. I didn't know what I was going to do. All of a sudden, like that, it had just been wiped out. Especially when there was talk of this going on for like at least 2 to 3 years. I was thinking, what? How am I going to get through this? We survived. Oh, and also on top of that, my husband got made redundant. So that was wonderful. Oh, it was just a nightmare, absolute nightmare. But we survived. We had some government grants because I was self-employed, and we managed to get through the next 12 months. He got himself another job, and I did pull the business back in 2021. Although, it's never fully recovered after COVID, if I'm being 100% honest. It's not turned over anywhere near what it used to. But that's also because I decided that, I do want to go a different route with my life now. And I still do Vintage Twee and it still pays the bills. But I've got a stronger pull, and I've had a stronger pull in the last year to doing something different. And that is to helping other women who want to start their own businesses as well. I love helping people. Colleagues are always asking for my advice. They say it's good. They say that, they're just being kind, I don't know, but they say that I make things easy for them to understand. Make them feel inspired and motivated, which is lovely. And I like to think I'm a kind person, and I genuinely want to help people. I want people to be successful and to achieve things, because, this life is too short to be unhappy. So, if you've got that creative dream and there's something you want to do for you, then, there's no time like the present. Do it. It's never a right time to start anything, but if it's something that you really want, then you can achieve it. And I'm a strong believer in that. So I decided to set up Her Handmade Hustle in August this year, 2023, as a source of support, really, for female entrepreneurs, who want to embark on a creative venture of their own, who want some support but they don't know where to start. It's so overwhelming when you first start a business, especially now. I think it's harder now because you've got all the social media stuff to deal with as well. You can drown in it, and there's a lot more competition now than there was when I started, so you really have to up your game. And I think it's hard for women to do that on their own now. You need somebody just to give you a bit of guidance, just to be with you in your pocket, to help you when you've got questions that things you're not sure about. So I set up a Facebook group, which has now got around 550 members. I can't believe it. I started it in August thinking, I'll be lucky if I get 50 members by Christmas. We're at 550 now, which is crazy. And I'm so grateful to each and every woman that's joined, because obviously they are valuing my advice and what I'm telling them, and I'm trying to help them as much as I can, because I can see myself in them so much. I can see their enthusiasm, and I can see their frustrations as well. So, that's my aim of the group, is I give advice in it, give support. So if you're not part of the Facebook group, please go along and find me, Her Handmade Hustle, on Facebook groups, and join it. I'll happily welcome you in. And you'll find so much information on there already. There's loads of video tutorials all around social media, visibility. I've got a weekly newsletter as well that's free. You can sign up to that. It's got free business advice. I do sort of do a different topic every week, so they're really meaty. There's a lot in them. I've had some great feedback from them. I think we're on issue 4 now. So if you want to join that, you can head to my website, which is www.herhandmadehustle.co.uk, and there's a button on there which says subscribe to the weekly newsletter. So just click on that, pop your email in, and you'll come straight through to me. And every Monday, try for every Monday morning, if I'm organised enough and nobody's been poorly, or over the weekend, I get your email to you straight in your inbox. So yeah, and I've just started now to offer my business coaching services as well. So I'm hoping in the new year I might be able to work with some women on a much more deeper level and help them develop their business as well, hand in hand, and one-to-one support. So yeah, that is where I've come from. I mean, that was quite a lot to take in. I wanted to give you that background though, because I just think it's really important. If you are going to invest your time in me and listening to me, and I'm so grateful if you even got this far, honestly. Like, I really am. I know that time is precious these days, but I was listening to a podcast only yesterday, and the lady who runs it is fantastic, and she's given me a lot of inspiration, actually. And she's just saying that people now are craving this intimacy of a podcast, because on social media, you're scrolling through it, your attention's caught for what, maybe 30 seconds on something, then you flick to the next thing and the next thing, and it's just changing all the time. You can't concentrate on anything. But I've been making a conscious effort to listen to some podcasts to help inspire me about entrepreneurship, and it's made me do this, to be honest. It's made me start this podcast because I thought, I've enjoyed it. It's helped me focus every day and put some plans into action, and I believe that this can do that for you as well. We're going to talk about so many things. We're going to talk about, you're addressing your fears, your challenges, what's holding you back from starting your business. I'm going to tell you what worked for me, what didn't work for me, what I've learned. I'm going to help you. If you've got a plan, you just don't know how to execute it to start your business, I'm going to help you do that. And if you don't have a plan, I'll help you make one. So there's loads of things that we're going to talk about during the course of this podcast, and I'm hoping to have some people who want to come and be guests on it as well. There's a few ladies that I've got in mind who have started their own business. Some are in the beginning stages, some are a bit further along, really strong, resilient women. I'd love to have them on so we can talk to them and they can share their stories with you as well. But yeah, this is all new to me. So episode 1, I was putting it out there, see how we get on. And then I'm going to start planning to try and do one a week. So I think you can, I don't know how you do it, I should know, but I think if you subscribe to the podcast channel, then you'll get notified when I upload a new one. I think that's how it works. I will come back to you on that one. But yeah, so really, I think that wraps it up for today's episode, my introduction episode. I really hope you've made it this far and I haven't sent you to sleep. I know there was a lot to talk about there. You probably found out a lot about me, more than some of my best friends know. But you know what? If we're going to be talking about personal things like business and finance and our feelings and, our challenges and things that are worrying us, then you need to know who I am and where I've come from. So I'm going to leave it on that note, and thank you for listening. I really hope to do another one soon, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.